Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome you all to the eighth session of the webinar series, The Voice for Unborns, organized by EarthMates Foundation Sri Lanka, specially collaboration with American Corner Matara. So it's an absolute pleasure to see you all here today. I'm Maranga Disanaika. I'm co-founder and founding president of EarthMates Foundation Sri Lanka, and also a graduate from Faculty of Law, University of Colombo, and I'll be your host tonight. Before moving to the proceedings of the day, let me briefly tell you about our organization. So, the EarthMates Foundation of Sri Lanka is a youth initiative by a group of young people who are disturbed by the damages that keeps happening to the environment and want to protect it for unborn. As EarthMates, we always envision a green nation, empowered to ensure the natural resources, foster a sustainable future, restore and enhance the environmental quality, environmental integrity for present and unborn generations. Secondly, I want to bring American Corner Matara to your attention. The American Corner Matara, who is collaborating with us today, is a part of American Spaces of Sri Lanka and a place for discovery, collaboration, and connection. They are functioning as resource centers to the public and more specifically for the youth. They are partnering with US Embassy, American and local organizations to host innovative programs that are free and open to the public, such as English, ICT, and entrepreneurship training courses, interactive panel discussions, workshops, and virtual conferences with the focus of empowering livelihood. With that, we are moving on to the topic today. Okay, actually, we noticed that very recently there were few reported cases relating to animal violence, and it was going viral in social media. And there were a lot of debates and questions relating to the existing laws relating to the animal violence. So, today we will be talking about the important aspects of animal rights in Sri Lanka, especially giving the priority to discuss about the legal background of it. For today's discussion, we have invited a great personality in Sri Lanka who is always committed to protect animals, raised her voice on animals' rights, and truly an activist for both words and action. So we are honored to have Mrs. Lalani Serasinghe Perera here today. She is an attorney at law, and also she holds a LLB degree from the University of Colombo and a master in law from the same university. Ma'am, we are truly honored by your presence today.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, before moving to the very first question of the day, one more thing to remind you all. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. So if you have any question, either you can directly ask by unmuting your microphone or else you can type them in the chat box. Okay, with that, let's move on to the first question of the day. Ma'am, like in most of the communities, some people are talking about animal welfare and some people are talking about animal rights. So, animal welfare and animal rights. Is this equal or is there a difference between these two concepts?
Eranga, I'm very happy to join you to talk about this very important topic about our voiceless friends, the animals. Okay, now to answer your question, animal welfare and animal rights, there is a very important difference. Animal rights is a very wide concept. It's total protection for animals where they are not used for any purpose, for food or entertainment or for clothing, with no exceptions, which recognize humane treatment. Now, animal welfare is all about the humane treatment of animals, where animals can be used for various purposes, such as for food or for research or as a means of transport, but in a way that no pain or suffering is caused to the animal. As an example, for food, slaughter methods should be humane. That's just one example, Eranga. I don't know whether you have heard of PETA. That's the acronym for People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, and a well-known international organization. PETA's definition of these two concepts are animal rights mean that animals are not ours to use for food, clothing, entertainment, or experimentation. Animal welfare allows these uses as long as humane guidelines are followed. Why should animals be protected? They are sentient beings like us humans. They too feel pain. They too have emotions. We regularly hear or read about incidents of animal cruelty, horrendous acts of cruelty that animals are subjected to, whether they are pets or wild animals.
Okay.
Not so very long ago, they were considered chattel, like tables, chairs, or other movable items.
Okay, ma'am. And also, like when we discuss about the animals, we cannot forget about the human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka because it is highlighted in the Sri Lankan media daily. We have to ensure the safety of both human and animals. So I think it needs to be addressed scientifically. So what is the law that governs elephant protection in Sri Lanka, according to your view?
There are two laws actually. One is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, which applies to all domestic animals. That is animals like cats and dogs, and also animals who are in the custody of people. Then there is the this Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance that applies to wild animals. So elephants in the jungles would be covered by the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. So those are the two main acts that will apply to animals in Sri Lanka.
Okay. So, and also we have to talk about this protecting stray dogs also. Like protecting stray dogs is a famous subtopic in every animals right discussion. So these stray dogs are considered menace by some people, and they can be rabid. So what is being done to overcome this problem, madam?
Yes, some people do consider them a nuisance, but actually they are affectionately referred to as man's best friend. The world over, they are recognized as, or rather referred to as man's best friend, because, and also coexistence of dogs with humans date back to over 15,000 years. For example, now if you look at the Mahavamsa records that when Prince Vijaya landed in our country, that was in the 5th century BC, seeing a dog and surmising that only where there is a village that dogs are to be found, Prince Vijaya followed the dog that led him to Queni. In our country, the solution to eradication of rabies is the destruction of the animal. This is what our law, the rabies ordinance, prescribes. However, in 2006, a no-kill policy was declared by the then president, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. The person who was responsible for getting this declared was one of our veteran animal welfareists, Sagarika Rajakarunanayak. I'm sure you have heard of her. She's the one who proposed this to the president. Now, with the no-kill policy, destruction stopped. And what is called CNVR commenced. CNVR means catch, neuter, vaccinate, and release, so that they are vaccinated, neutered, and they are released to their same background. And it was slowly gaining it was actually very successful, but unfortunately there was a breakdown some years back. uh, it was earlier done by the Ministry of Health, but for some reason or other the responsibility was transferred to the Ministry of Livestock, and with that transfer certain issues arose with the transfer, and there was a temporary halt to CNVR. But fortunately, now it's back with the health ministry. But the CNDR has now slowed down with COVID because it's difficult to do these programs. It's done by the health ministry, their team of vets. they go down, they go all over the country and do the sterilizations. But at the moment, because of the COVID situation, it has not actually stopped, but there has been some delays in going ahead with it. Now, this is really what India does. This is India's initiative, where CNVR is an absolutely successful story. And now what we have suggested, we have a group that has gone to court on animal rights, all types of animal rights. That was in 2010 that we went to court. And one of the proposals that we have made through the court is amendments to the rabies ordinance to legally recognize CNVR, because right now it's not legally recognized, it's administratively recognized. I don't think anyone will bring a halt it, but it's always good to put it into the law. So we have now, through this court case, proposed that amendments be made to the rabies ordinance to recognize CNVR as the method of stray dog population control.
Okay. Thank you so much, madam, for that great explanation. And ma'am, like very recently, we saw that our former president Mahinda Rajapaksa talking about a ban on cattle slaughter. So those days, it was going viral, creating lots of controversial debates among the community. So what are your views on that cattle slaughter?
Well, that was great news, but I have two issues there. One is that although slaughter of cattle will be stopped in Sri Lanka, there were reports that beef will be imported, right? To me, that is sheer hypocrisy. Not killing in our country, but increasing the slaughter in other countries to provide Sri Lankans with beef. Humane slaughter is the solution, not only for cattle, but for all food animals. Humane slaughter should be the method for all food animals. And the group that has gone to court, we have also through a court case proposed humane methods like stunning before slaughter, and we hope that will be accepted. I understand that the local government ministry is considering our proposal at the moment for humane slaughter of food animals.
Okay. Thank you so much, madam. Again, I want to ask, like, very recently we heard a very unfortunate incident relating to animal violence. As I remember, a dog called Kane was brutally treated. So I think we need to talk about that also. Like, how can these abandoned animals, I mean, cats and dogs, be helped?
I'm very sorry to say that incidents like this are increasing, or maybe not increasing, but reportage is increasing, because I'm sure those happened earlier also, but now there's increased reporting. Now some people say shelters for these animals. You may have just down. I'm sorry. Shelters are not the solution in my view. You may have heard of what happened in Nellikulama in Anuradhapura, where stray dogs were dumped in a so-called shelter. It was a disaster where the dogs attacked each other. Some died due to the attacks. They were without food or water, and welfare organizations had to rush there to save whatever animals possible. That was a very sad situation. The solution is to find homes and get these animals adopted. That is the solution.
Okay. Moving on to the next question, ma'am. Like, now we have noticed that many countries are closing down zoos. So zoos are very important when we are talking about this animal violence, because there most of the every animal suffer both like physically and mentally. So my question is, are these zoos a necessary evil?
Yes, several countries are closing down zoos and they're changing to an open zoo concept, which is great news because zoos are actually animal prisons. They can hardly move. So I know in Sri Lanka also, they are going into this concept of open zoos, but still our Dehiwala Zoo is a massive attraction, sort of attraction for the people. And I hope this open zoo concept will gain more importance soon so that we will see this open zoo concept developing faster because in zoos animals really suffer. They are in fact these are animal jails.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Now I have come to the most important question of the day. Um, we have to like talk about the legal background here. In Sri Lanka, like what are the laws that deals with animal protection, and also are they effective? That's the main question. And if not, what is being done to update them and make them effective? And also, let's talk about the bill that has been already drafted against the animal violence. Yeah, let's talk about this in brief now.
Our laws dealing with animal protection are terribly outdated. The main law now in force is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance that was enacted over a century ago in 1907. Perhaps sufficient at that time, but certainly not today. And this ordinance recognizes only very few offenses. That's one drawback. The other one is it does not cover all animals. It covers only domestic animals like cats and dogs and birds, etc. And the other issue is that law recognizes very inadequate punishments. The maximum jail term that can be given is 3 months and the maximum fine is only 100 rupees. That's terrible in today's context. Then as far as wild animals are concerned, we have the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. And if we talk about elephants in captivity, most often these elephants in captivity suffer tremendously. Some of you may have seen pictures of these elephants, all four legs changed. So this is why uh, in 2010, the Animal Welfare Trust, that's one of the well-known animal welfare organizations in the country, they went to the Court of Appeal on this and the court approved regulations which were actually approved by the cabinet in 2016. That is about the welfare of elephants in the custody of people. These regulations were approved by the cabinet in 2016, but they have to be gazetted to become law, but still they have not been gazetted. What we hear is that some elephant owners are preventing the government from gazetting them so that they can continue to exploit these elephants for their benefit. Then the other important thing is the animal welfare bill that applies to all animals. Animal is defined very widely in that. It says any sentient being other than human beings. That is how the animal welfare bill defines an animal. That was drafted by Sri Lanka's Law Commission and recommended to the government in 2006, over 15 years ago. Actually, in the drafting, Mr. Senaka Viraratna, lawyer, he is the one who actually did the first draft for the Law Commission. Then that was in 2006. It was presented to the then president. Then Venerable Athurelia Ratanathera, member of parliament at that time, also now, he submitted what's called a private members bill because the Law Commission bill, there was not much progress with the Law Commission bill. He submitted a private members bill to Parliament, but unfortunately, when Parliament was dissolved in 2010, that bill lapsed. So that was the end of the private members bill. Then a group of us, we went to court in 2010. We filed a writ application which dealt with animal welfare, all animal, many animal welfare issues. such as the human method of rabies control, because under the rabies ordinance, destruction is the method for rabies. However, in 2006, then President Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa declared a no-kill policy, which prohibited killing and recognized what is called CNVR, that is catch, neuter, vaccinate, and release as the rabies control method. This policy was declared after one of our most senior animal welfare activists, Sagarika Rajakarunanayaka, made representations to the then president. And that was very, very successful. Since the no-kill policy is only a policy, it is easy to change it. That is why it must be converted into a law. So that's why we have suggested that through this our court case, that the rabies ordinance be amended to recognize CNVR as the method of controlling rabies. Then a statutory ban on ritual animal sacrifice. That's also something that we have recommended through our court case. That was also in 2010. The thing is, a group of us did go to court in 2010, and we were able to get a directive, but it's difficult to adhere to these conditions. Because for ritual animal sacrifice, you need to get a permit. And now the court has laid down certain strict guidelines. And recently, in Jaffna, in one area, this ritual animal sacrifice was conducted. And they said they had permits, but whether these conditions were fully adhered to is doubtful. They do say they were adhered to. There was a whole range of conditions, but they said they adhered to, but we don't know really. I think the most important thing is to ban ritual animal sacrifice, because right now they can carry it on with certain conditions. Then the most important development as far as animal welfare is concerned, is the Animal Welfare Bill, which has been pending for a long, long time. This was also recommended by Sri Lanka's Law Commission in 2006. Actually, a political will to protect animals was seen in the 2005 political manifesto of Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, where he described animal cruelty as a disgrace to the nation. Then in 2015, in the 2015 election manifesto of Mr. Maithripala Sirisena, Mr. Sirisena too pledged to introduce laws to protect animals. Now, that's very important because that shows a political will. So from 2006, this political will, we can see that, but nothing substantial has happened. So that's the issue. Then I think a group of us went to court again to get the bill moving, and then 14 activists went to court to get the bill moving and to draw the attention of the government to this need for this bill. And after many, many years of delay, mainly caused by groups with vested interests, mainly the meat industry, it was possible to proceed with the bill. And over the years, we have lobbied many, many parliamentarians on the need for this bill. So have other animal rights organizations, not only us who went to court, but many other animal rights organizations have also lobbied for this bill, and they are continuing to do, and so are we. So it was a massive struggle to take this bill forward. In fact, on the advice of the Attorney General, a steering committee consisting of government officers, the relevant government officials, and us, that is the petitioner representatives, were appointed to take the bill forward. So then I will talk about the main features of the Animal Welfare Bill. They include a wide definition of animal, a very wide definition, because right now it's a very limited definition. Then stringent punishments. Now the punishment is 100 rupees or 3 months jail term. Then special provision for animal transport. There's nothing about, you may have seen how cattle taken for slaughter and fowl taken for slaughter, how they are transported. It's terrible. It's really terrible to watch them. So there is special provision in this animal welfare bill as to how they should be transported. Then human methods of animal experimentation also, because there is some standards as how to experiments could be conducted when animals are used. Then as I told you, it recognizes a wide range of offenses and has enhanced punishments. And but that also has been pending for a long, long time, especially because of the objections for the meat industry. However, now all issues have been sorted out. And I'm happy to say last year in March, we also met President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and his response was also very positive. And then on 2 occasions this year, we also met Minister Mahindananda Alukamage, the minister responsible for the bill right now. On 2 occasions, we met him, and we understand that the bill has now been submitted to the cabinet for approval. About 2 weeks ago, it had been submitted. And I understand it has also received cabinet approval, but there's still a long way to go, because now it has to go back to the Attorney General for his certificate on constitutionality, and then it has to be gazetted and then presented in Parliament, debated. So it will take some time, but at least I'm happy that the government has now accepted the need for this bill, and I hope the ministry concerned, they will take the steps to present the bill in Parliament for approval as soon as possible, because it has been pending for such a long time.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam, for that great explanation. And it's really happy to hear that the law and policy making relating to this is in the progress. So let's make a wish together to pass the bill and to make the actions against the animal violence in the future. Okay. With that, I thought of opening the floor to the audience to ask questions, because I think my set of questions is over. I think we have to give more chances to the audience, because I know they have a lot of questions to ask. So floor is now open to audience. If you have any question, feel free to unmute your mic, and directly you can ask the questions, or else you can type them in the chat box. Okay, already we have a question from Serasinghe. She has asked, most of the animals are suffering in pet shops, in cages. So, in any act or law available for them for this?
Yeah. The Animal Welfare Bill has a separate chapter on pet shops, because the pet shops are, it's difficult for the main government to legislate for pet shops. It has to be done through the local government, because it's a devolved subject. But in the Animal Welfare Bill, there are certain sections which show how animals in pet shops should be kept. So I think that's a great development, but it's up to the local government ministry to take this forward, because the national legislation can't provide for that, because pet shops are devolved. So that's the issue. But there's a whole chapter in the Animal Welfare Bill also, which at least to some extent gives some relief to the animals in pet shops. There are certain conditions as to how they should be kept in pet shops. And the punishments and all will have to be legislated by the provincial councils.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Um, if you have more questions, you can ask. Okay, there's another question from Mr. Lalani. Is there such a thing as wildlife crime in Sri Lanka?
Yes, wildlife crime, yes. All the crimes against animals in the wild are wildlife crimes, and those will be governed by the, not by the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, but by the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance. There are many offences against these animals. If you go through the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance, there are several offences that can be committed on wild animals, and there are stringent punishments. But unfortunately, this Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance, FFPO, is also rather old and it needs amendments. So we are trying to get that also amended so that the punishments are increased and brought to some standard. But there are laws, but they need to be amended. There are suggestions, are many suggestions are there. Actually, one privately drafted law is also there, updating it. But what we need mostly are amendments to recognize more types of crimes and to prescribe more stringent penalties for animals in the wild.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think there are more questions. Okay, we have another question in the chat box. Are there any mechanism to aware general public regarding the animal rights?
Uh, no mechanism. There is no mechanism, but there are a lot of, what shall I say, people are mechanisms in the sense we do have sessions, meetings, seminars, now like what you are doing. There are several, but I don't think that's enough. We need more programs like that where we can talk to the people and tell them what animal rights are and get their views now like what you are doing. That's very important. So we need more programs like this where we can explain what animal rights are, what weaknesses are there, and call for suggestions how they can be improved. But I won't say that there is any formal mechanism.
Okay, thank you so much, madam, for that answer. Um, if you have any questions, so you can ask directly also by unmuting your microphone. Okay, if we compare, ma'am, like if we compare our laws with the other law jurisdictions in other foreign countries, I mean developed countries, let's say, what kind of examples that we can take to improve our legislations and our laws relating to this kind of?
Unfortunately, if we are compare our laws, especially with the laws in Western countries, I don't think it's a very sad situation. So we need to amend our laws because we have to recognize more acts as offences, then prescribe very stringent penalties. That's the most important thing because right now there are so many international conventions on animal rights. So we need to look at those and bring our laws into conformity with those. Otherwise, we will be lagging behind, especially in European countries. You get, not for all animals, but for certain types of animals, certain groups of animals, you get different types of laws. So we need to look at all those and improve our laws. Otherwise, we will be lagging far behind. And in a country like ours, with this our heritage, now say over a long time ago, during the times of our ancient kings, animals were given a lot of protection. But unfortunately, with colonialism, it went down, and it that importance that was given to animal protection reduced a lot. So we need to get back to that era. I know it's a long, long time ago, let's say 2,500 years ago. So we need to get back to that era, and also look at the laws in the other countries and see what is suitable to us, and especially in the country. So I hope the animal welfare bill will go through quickly, because that will be a major victory for animal rights and animals.
Okay. So, though the animal welfare bill is in the progress, but still, but now we have laws related to animal violence. So, when implementation of the when we talk about the implementation of those laws, what kind of loopholes or what are the lacunas that we can see for now in other laws except the animal welfare bill?
Actually, that's a very, very important question. It's laws can be beautiful on paper, but in implementing, then only you see whether it's actually happening or not. It can be a very beautiful law, but if the implementation is weak, that is of absolutely no use. So you have to train the people who implement the law enforcement. That's one thing. Now, when the animal welfare bill comes into force, it will be the police that will be totally responsible for this. But there's a very important section in the animal welfare bill, because right now, private persons can't file cases in courts, animal violence. They have to do it's they can, but it's difficult. But the animal welfare bill recognizes the right of a private person to go to court directly. Right now you have to make a complaint to the police, and if the police don't do anything, you have to, it's there is a process, but it's a very long process. Like I remember in the Munneswaran animal slaughter case, I did because the police were not doing anything. I went to the court in the magistrate's court in Chilau with a case to stop this, because my complaints to the police, they didn't take any notice of it. But it's very difficult. It's not like the police filing a case. Anyway, it can be done, but the animal welfare bill recognizes the right of a private individual to go direct to court without going through the police. So you don't need to go through these private processes. You can go direct to the magistrate's court if if there's violence against animals.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Um, if you have more questions, you can ask. We have more time for the discussion. Okay, so we have another question from the audience. In poultry and piggery farming, to deprive the living chances of animals. So, what do you think about this matter? This question is from Chandana Disanaika. in fault and figure farming?
I believe you mean the slaughter methods now for poultry. Now that's what's called the butcher's ordinance, and unfortunately, in the butcher's ordinance, the definition of animal does not include poultry, but we have through our court case suggested an amendment to the butcher's ordinance to include also poultry. But pigs are included. But the thing is, there are no humane methods recognized. They are allowed, but with now poultry, you don't need a license to slaughter poultry, but to slaughter pigs, you need a license from the relevant local authority. But it has no conditions about the conditions of slaughter, how the animal should be slaughtered. That's for pigs. For the fowl, there's no provision at all. So now what we have done is suggested amendments to the butcher's ordinance to provide that slaughter of whatever food animal, including poultry, that humane methods of slaughter be introduced so that when the animals are, they can be desensitized, things like that, and then kill them rather than just killing them alive like what happens now. So that will apply also to poultry. Poultry now have absolutely no, as I told you, you would have seen how they are transported in lorries in the hot sun and the pouring rain.
Okay. Ma'am, and also, can we find any case law jurisdictions relating to animal violence in Sri Lanka? Any reported or punishments, case laws?
Uh, very, very few, and they are very, very reported cases I'm talking about, right? Like they may be like several decades old, but one important case is the Muneswaran slaughter case. That's one thing. But very few cases where animal cruelty, and they are mostly with regard to not the method of killing, but how they were transported. But they are very, very few. And recently, there are cases that are being now filed quite often by animal rights activists who see the way animals are transported, how they are killed, all that. Right now, there are several cases pending. Even recently, there were some 51 odd cattle and goats were being transported under terrible conditions. And two groups have already filed cases. This is court, I don't want to mention the court. So there are people who are filing cases now. And I hope some will go to the Court of Appeal also so that they will have some standing. But there are people who are going to court now regularly, unlike those days.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. And also, we have another question from the audience. Where can we complain about animal cruelty in Sri Lanka?
Very good question. Right now, it's only the police. But once the animal, it is only the police actually. Even after the animal welfare bill is passed, it will be to the relevant police because they are the people who have the power. Because earlier in the animal welfare bill, there was a proposal to include the animal welfare authority, but that's no longer there. So it's the police that will have to entertain the complaints about animal cruelty. Of course, a lot of people bring these incidents to animal rights organizations and well-known animal welfare activists, and they are able to talk to the police, because sometimes people are afraid to talk to the police, or they don't have the strength to go to the police. So now what they do is they talk to animal welfare organizations or well-known animal activists who take up the cases on their behalf and talk to the police and try to do something. That has been successful, at least to some extent. So if anyone sees any animal cruelty and they don't have the means, or they for some reason they are scared to go to the police, they can always contact a well-known animal welfare organization or animal welfareist, and I'm sure they will help. I know I have been helping them. So many people like that, yes. And I know other organizations that have also done that.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. And also, like apart from the police, what kind of what are the other authorities that are responsible with this animal welfare? Maybe governmental or non-governmental. What are the authorities that are responsible?
Governmental, absolutely, there is nothing except the police at the moment. There's nothing governmental, it's the police. Non-governmental, of course, you can complain. There are so many organizations, animal welfare organizations. You can complain to them. But governmental, so far, as at now, even after the animal welfare bill is passed, it will be the police, because the authority will no longer be there, although it was there in the early act. Now it's no longer there. The police has the full responsibility.
Okay. If you have more questions, you can ask, or else you can type the question in the chat box. Okay, there's another question from Mr. Serasinghe. Could you please tell us wildlife continue to increase in the post threats in Sri Lanka, and how does this affect the stability of biodiversity? Because Sri Lanka considered as a biodiversity spot. So what can we do with the legal framework?
Wildlife crime is increasing because, as you can see, elephants. Now today, what is happening to elephants, you can see. And the thing is, as you say, the biodiversity, all that is affected. So what can be done is to take action without, there can be so many influencers to stop uh, wildlife crime being investigated. I'm sure you are aware of that. But if the authorities go ahead prosecuting this wildlife crime, then I think that will be a good beginning, because right now that's not happening as much as it should. So it's up to the authorities to take notice of these complaints and file action in court, so that to some extent this wildlife crime can be reduced. Otherwise, because as I told you, there are a lot of influencers brought against people who complain. There are certain not bars really, influencers, which stop wildlife crime being investigated. There must be a stop to this. Otherwise, as you can see today, it's increasing. Every day we hear about elephants, so many things. Of course, there has to be a balance, but action must be taken by the authorities who are responsible for implementing the law.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. As we have more time, we can wait for more questions. So feel free to ask any question relating to this topic. Okay, it looks like there are no more questions from the audience. Now we have come to the end of the session then. Okay, before terminating today's session, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to our guest speaker today, Mrs. Lalani Serasinghe Perera. Thank you so much, madam, for your valuable contribution for this discussion. And also my gratitude goes to the team from American Spaces Sri Lanka and also American Phone Matara for supporting us to organize this session. Last but not least, thank you for the organizing committee of Voice for Unborn and all the EarthMates who joined us today. Okay, thank you everyone and good night.
Thank you.